Welcome to New York University, Casa Italiana, Zerilli-Marimò. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all here tonight for this event that we organized with the Centro Primo Levi here in New York. As you know, this event is part of the ongoing series of events organized under the auspices of the Italian Consulate General here in New York, that is represented here tonight by the Deputy Consul of Italy, Lucia Pasqualini. That, as every year, sees really the collaboration of all the major Italian institutions in New York. As you know, January 27th marks the day in which the Red Army liberated the concentration extermination camp of Auschwitz. And that's the day that a group of European countries decided to adopt to observe the memory of the Shoah. And to have a full list of the events that have been organized in New York and that began on Monday with the reading of the names of the Italian victims of the Shoah in front of the Consulate General, log on to the website of the Centro Primo Levi and you will have a full view of all the events that are upcoming. I just want to remind you of two in particular. One is the seminar on Rita Levi-Montalcini, a Jewish scientist in fascist Italy, that is going to be held on February 4th. That is Tuesday at the Center for Jewish History here on 16th Street. And on Monday, February 3rd, we're going to have the screening of a film called La Pianista Bambina, that is the story of a young girl, the real story of a young girl that survived through the Holocaust in the Ukraine and other parts of Eastern Europe, thanks to her ability to play the piano. And the witness, the protagonist of that story, is also going to be present here with us on Monday evening. And without further ado, I would like to tell you something about our program tonight. As you know, we are about to see a documentary film. The title is The Longest Journey, The Deportation of the Jews of Rhodes. It's by Ruggero Gabbai, who's the director, and it's based on the historical research of Liliana Picciotto-Fargione and Marcello Pezzetti. This is an event that I particularly care for because this documentary features, and I know my voice is going to break, but you stay with me anyway, features also one of the persons that I admire the most here in New York, who is Stella Levi. And Stella has been present very, very often here at the Casa, and normally sitting around those seats. And tonight she's going to be on the stage, and I know that for her, it's not an easy walk to walk these 3 steps from the chair in which she sits when she participates in our events to the chair up there when she will be asked to relive for us some of the parts of this experience. And for this, I'm very, very grateful to Stella. So please stay with us for the film and for the discussion that is going to follow. Thank you very much.
I don't think I could talk much, but I'd rather have some, if you have any questions, and maybe then I can get into it. 70 years ago, the community, Jewish community of Rhodes, came to an end, and so did my life. Because, as I would say, what the documentary cannot tell is what I lost. My father's home, my roots. And since then, I haven't found it. I feel a stranger everywhere. Or a guest. And what is most horrible is that I never found the reason why. At the end of the war, they would come to pick up 1,800 people. And as I said, the grandmother of a friend of mine who was 104 years old. For what? And 23 days. For what? What kind of furious, irrational hatred could bring what we used to call civilized people, like the Germans, who gave us the Western civilization so many great artists? Why? Does any one of you have an answer for that?
I think every nation is capable of brutality and of doing these horrific things. If you want to take their resources and you want to improve your own situation in a country, you can demonize anyone, and you have the means of communication, and you make children become balila and all of that. That's the information you get. I don't think it's so hard to understand that. But I think it's a very important example of what can happen to a people in those circumstances. I don't think Hitler was crazy. He was supported by the big industrialists. And he obviously hated Jews for whatever crazy reason.
Have you ever, I'm sorry to interrupt.
You can build on that. Any nation
True.
is capable of doing
True. Have you ever seen somebody very well dressed, in beautiful uniform, very clean, excuse me, elegant, shot a child, cold blood? There is no Balila there, there is no Mussolini there, and cold, not one, not two, not three. I've seen many gunshots for nothing at all, for no reason at all.
Natalia, do you want to add something?
I just wanted to ask, I know that you were very young when this happened, but what was the level of knowledge that the Jews in Rhodes had of what was going on in the rest of Europe? I know, like in Hungary, they were able to keep them very isolated so that they didn't know.
We were very isolated. The Italian the newspapers, they were always giving us the news that their allies, in other words, the Germans and the Italians, were winning the war. And if we ever listen to the British, to BBC News, we would hear sometimes, yes, that they were persecutions, but that's far away. That's in Germany, in Poland. They will never come here. This will never happen here. And indeed, for almost 8 months, the Germans did not touch us. They were in Rhodes from October 1943, when they took over, when the Italian governor surrendered, until July 1944. They did not give any inclination that they would take us away.
I'd like just to add to this question. The deportation of Salonika happened a few months before.
Almost a year.
Right,
before,
almost a. So,
1943.
did you have any information of that? There was no information
No.
coming.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, was there a Jewish elder or leader of the Jewish community who helped round up, and not knowing what would happen, but who helped with the German efficiency?
Did not help the poor gentleman. He did not help. They came already with the list prepared by the Italians. The Italians had already made a census before.
Because it was such a small community.
Exactly.
Yeah, most of the deportations in Italy and Italian territories happened through the list that the Italian police provided to the Germans. The Germans would have had no way to identify Jews. In Rhodes would have been easier, but certainly not in the rest of Italy.
I have a question, Stella. Did you know, had you kept in touch with the other two people who went to Rhodes with you, Sami and Israel?
Yes, of course. Alberto Israel is a second cousin of mine, and I have seen him many times in Brussels also. And Sami, I see him in Rhodes when I go there, yes. And in fact, most of a lot of the information that he has given, I had told him because he was a very young boy. He was only 13, in fact, and he had his bar mitzvah he says in the camp, but they really gave him the bar mitzvah in Rome later on.
Gentleman back there.
Yes, is there any way that we could trace the culprits who ordered this removal? Was there any, after the war, did the Allied War Crimes Commission find out who was responsible for
The British were in Rhodes for 2 years before they ceded the islands. I'm sorry if it... Before they ceded the islands to the Greeks, the British were in Rhodes for 2 years, and debating whether they would keep it or not. And so I don't know what...
There have been large general post-war trials for the Balkans and some of the islands. In truth, the German documents on Rhodes have not been studied, and this is certainly something that historians are beginning to do now. Also, largely the archives of the Italian police were thought to be lost, but they were in fact identified about 2 months ago in the Greek police archives, and they've now been acquired by the Athens State Archive, and I understand that the Holocaust Museum and other institutions are beginning to study them. But yes, it is a story that still needs a lot of research.
So, Natalia, as far as you know, nobody was put under trial for these facts, or nobody was convicted, or at least...
No, there was the German, I can't remember his name, sorry, but the German commander who was responsible for the deportations in Greece, more in general, and in Salonika, was tried. However, we really don't know what happened in Rhodes. It's really what happened, because as I still explained, that the SS arrived after a year that the Germans had taken military control of the islands. In fact, there were very limited troops. The administration, the civilian administration, remained in the hands of the Italians until the day of the deportation. And the exact story of what happened in Rhodes, I think, is still an open field of study.
There was no Gestapo, no SS in Rhodes, and as Natalia already knows, because I have told her many times, and she read it, that the civilian administration in Rhodes was Italian, and Italians that had gone to, had sworn allegiance to the Republic of Salò, that is Mussolini, after 1943.
This, I think, is a piece of history that deserves a larger study, because usually it's thought that from Naples north, the the Italian authorities took the oath to Salò and Mussolini. So Rhodes is a particular case because it was down, to the end of the Mediterranean, and yet all the civilian administration joined the Italian Social Republic.
Yes, the lady there.
Letters between those who stayed on the island and those who had emigrated to, say, Congo and to the mainland.
Non sento.
Gli ebrei che sono rimasti a Rodi e quelli che erano emigrati in Congo, a Seattle, in Argentina, se c'erano corrispondenze.
No,
Se
no.
corrispondevano.
No correspondence, no, not at all. I mean, not after the war, at the
You mean before the
Before?
deportation?
While things were going on, say, correspondence of rumors of resistance or of difficulties, what kind of letter, what kind of information could have percolated through letters of family?
No, the two different moments. I mean, some of the people that she was talking about and that are shown in the movie who have moved to the Congo, for instance, were before the deportation. So the letters between those people in Congo and the people in Rhodes obviously happened, but in Congo there was no sense of what was happening in Poland. So, in other words, what Stella has repeated many times and all of the people there was that until the day of a roundup, the Jews in Rhodes felt this enormous sense of belonging to this little island, and they felt not threatened at all. They were aware somewhat that something really bad was happening in Eastern Europe, but they did not see how this related to them. And paradoxical as it seems today, this is really the same perception the Jews in most Mediterranean countries had. I mean, the Jews of Italy, until deportation began, were convinced that yes, this horrible stuff is happening, but it won't happen to us. Here, we're safe. We are Italians, and the Italians will not do this to us. And I think that this extended to a very large extent to the people in Rhodes. And as Natalia asked before about the deportation from Salonika, which is close, that enormous event that really concerned a lot of people who had family ties with people in Rhodes even, did not have any kind of significant echo on the island.
Also, this was an island under the fascist regime, which was highly censored. The propaganda was very strong. The information arrived highly filtered. By the way, the Italian authorities, was a recent publication on propaganda, Italian propaganda in the islands and in Greece. The Italian government invested greatly in censorship and propaganda in those areas. So
we have to add also private correspondence was censored.
Yes.
In time of war, the government reserved the right to open all letters, even private correspondence, open them up, and either trash them or cut parts of it.
No,
So-
this is the people under 20 years of dictatorship. I mean, you couldn't sleep outside of your home without notifying the police under fascism. It's not a free. This is not a free country. It's a totalitarian country. So clearly, what people know becomes extremely limited and distilled.
Il pencio. Vuoi raccontare?
No.
I mean, I imagine when you say you never found that place again, that home in that community, I would imagine that it's partially because all your neighbors failed to come. I mean, what I guess I'm asking too, why did the people who are, the other man said we all lived together and there was all this friendship, and what would they just stand by and watch?
You mean the other ethnic groups? Exactly. Yes. Yes, that's what they did. I always said that. And this is what hurts me the most. That everyone, and this is also what can happen today, the lady there who was talking that it can happen any place, if we close our eyes and our ears and we turn the head away, it can happen anywhere.
And do you think, were they under threat? I mean, what
Not at all, not at all. First of all, well, I just don't want to say, the Greeks are a little more anti-Semites. And not only anti-Semites, they were against us because they wanted the islands for themselves. And they knew that the Jews were more pro-Italian than pro-Greeks. And that already happened in 1923 when the islands went to Italy legally, even though they were there since 1912.
You talked about your tremendous sense of feeling of betrayal to the Italians, and I see that you didn't come to the States till 1977. Did you go?
No, 1947, Stella arrived in the US.
You were liberated, you didn't go back to Italy.
She did.
No, I went to Italy. Mm. Yeah.
And I have a follow-up question to that of the lady. And being at Casa Italiana and being Italians, I'm fascinated and at the same time puzzled, Stella, but by your stubbornness in defining yourself Italian. And I heard one of the other people in the documentary said, you know, I'm gonna die Italian, Jewish, but Italian too. And you had this sense of betrayal from the Italians, you know, the teachers that didn't come looking for the pupils, and the Italian soldiers that stayed in their quarters while you were being deported. And at the same time, you still feel these cultural connection, these connection with the culture of Italy, with the art of Italy. That I know, because I know you very well, that it's a very important part of your being. So how is your being Italian, and you're so faithfully being Italian despite what you went through, also definitely by fault of the Italians?
Well, I feel that certain core feelings that I have, of course, are very Jewish. Ethics, very important for me, justice. And I always thought that this is very, very Jewish in a way, or I hope so. But everything that refined me, because I saw what was the community before the Italians came, Turkish culture, Middle Eastern, a little more constrained and reserved. The Italians, poetic, and the beautiful literature, the poetry, the music, and then they made me. They gave me my sensitivity towards beauty, towards appreciation of good things, elegance, and where I am.
Thank you. Yes.
Stella, there is any example of Gentile who saved Jews in Rhodes?
Only the Turkish consul to the Turkish citizen, but no other.
No private.
No private, no.
And I think that's an important example, nonetheless, because this was a government that came forward and said, these are our citizens, and you're not going to take them. And I think that's an example that we have very rare occurrences. I think Bulgaria is the other, and made a difference, in fact.
Were there any
Reparations.
Risarcimenti.
Yes, I get a pension from Germany and from Italy. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't repair anything. Reparations of what? How can you repair a broken heart?
I just wanted to add something that completes a little bit some of this, her question. it was very interesting. During the filming of this documentary, we were moving around different areas of Rhodes. And obviously, whenever there's a camera rolling and people around, people ask, what are you filming? What is this about? And so we explained what we were doing. And among the people watching, there were clearly people who had lived through that period, who were the age where they would have seen the Jews being deported and remembered the Jewish community. And it was so strange to really witness in all of them this total uncomfortable, awkward feeling with which, as soon as they learned what we were doing, they would just walk away in silence. And really no questions asked, no real curiosity, and kind of a feeling of shame, really.
Yes, the lady back there. Yes.
I'm just curious, I've been reading about France's record with their Jews, and French citizens, the percentage was actually quite large of survivors who were not given over to the Germans. It was the refugees that had come to France who were handed over to Germans, very quickly. Did Italy consider the citizens of Rhodes who were Jewish? Did they consider them Italian, or was there not that allegiance? I'm just confused.
No, the Jews of Rhodes were Italian citizens.
Were they considered absolutely Italian by Italy?
What do you mean?
Yes,
Yes, they were considered Italian.
The answer to the question is yes. They were full-fledged Italian citizens, but keep in mind that also the Italian Jewish citizens living in Italy were first discriminated in 1938 and then deported between 1944 and 1945. So the Italian Jews of Rhodes followed the same destiny of the Italian Jews of Italy.
See, it's so interesting, because my whole life, my father always talked about how the Italians did not, held back Jews. I mean, this is just made up. My father was, he was in the war. And he would always talk about how the French were horrible to their Jews, but the percentages are completely the opposite.
I think that always compiling the list of who was more horrible is hard.
I don't think it's...
No, and besides the joke, it's of course an issue that we debate very often here with our friends of the Centro Primo Levi.
Really, the main question is that the Jewish population of France was significantly larger than the Jews in Italy. Italy had roughly 40,000 Jews, and this is a very small in comparison to the percentage of Jews in France. Quite frankly, I think that this kind of debate becomes a kind of an accounting of horrors that goes nowhere. The truth is that the Jews in Italy were not treated in percentage better than the Jews of France. It's just a question of when and of the development of World War II. As the Italian government surrendered to the Germans and the Germans came in, Italian Jews who had been deprived of their civil rights since 1938 were deprived of their lives in very high percentages. And so the other thing to say once again is that of the roughly 8,000 Jews that were deported from Italy, 9,000 Jews that were deported from Italy, 50% of those were arrested by Italians. So again, it doesn't work to say that the Germans were the really bad ones and the Italians weren't. It's a very complex history.
I find it so interesting because my whole perception growing up was absolutely the opposite.
Can I
And
say
think with the conventional wisdom, it's completely different than what's coming out now, actually.
Yeah, I think that a lot of these misunderstandings and this, I think this debate stems from the fact that in recent years, nations have used the rate of deportation of the Jews for their PR, and this is not acceptable. Who had more, who had less, who had in the middle. The deportation of the Jews has been a European crime, and there is no 1 or 10,000 or millions that makes a difference. Has been something in which every country participated, and the Italian government persecuted the Jews and refused to protect them from to protect their lives when it came to the deportation.
And may I say something? And they all knew about it because when we went by train, the train stopped in all the Czechoslovakia. The Red Cross, International Red Cross, came to the station to give us a package. So they all knew. And if it weren't for the collaboration, whether willing or not, of the rest of Europe, the Germans alone couldn't have done. They did not have even the means, the people, to guard us.
Thank you.
If you go home and you look on the map of the Mediterranean where Rhodes is, it's really, really far from Italy. It's very close to Turkey, in fact. It's the title of his documentary is very fitting. It was the furthest from Poland that Jews were deported. And they were deported when the war was lost. The Germans knew by then that the war was lost. And still, to talk about numbers, they went in this really remote island, took 1,800 people. And again, it's a very small number, but it's all the Jews of that island. So it's an enormity, despite the fact that the number seems relatively small.
Yes, the lady back there, and then the last row, and then you. Yes.
No, I just want to thank you so much for your courage to tell your story. It just really touches my heart.
Can you speak a little louder?
I just want to thank you so much for your courage to tell your story, to share it with us. And it just means so much. My heart just feels so open from your honesty and your courage. And I just think it's so important these days. If you don't hear honesty more, so to share your truth with us is just very meaningful. And my question is, I'm just curious if any of the 183 people, there's 183 who survived.
150.
Yeah. Did any of them get any of their land back or property back from Rhodes?
Yes, the cousin of Sami Modiano went back and made a life for herself there. In fact, she was taking care of the synagogue. And she lived there. She married another Jew from Rhodes, and they had a family. The children then went to Israel, and she died a couple of years ago. Those were the only ones.
Back there, yes.
But I'm sorry, but I do thank you and all of you to come to listen to our story, because what is important, as another friend of mine said, we suffer every day, but this telling the story is for you.
We have time for another couple of questions. Yes, the lady back there.
Yes. It was said in the film that the synagogue was destroyed. Was it destroyed during the bombings, or did it happen afterwards?
La grande sinagoga è stata distrutta dai bombardamenti
It was
dopo.
bombed during, by the British and American air raids, yes.
And then the other question was, I'm sorry, that goes a little bit back. The British were in the port, so have they ever been asked about this? Have there ever been any sign of responsibility or any political statement about it?
By whom?
For the British.
I don't think the British would ever ask.
Well, if I may-
Pardon.
If I can mention just one thing,
Eh?
They're not in the business of apologizing.
No, they are not in the business of apology.
no, they won't do it, but in fact, historians have found that they intercepted the order of, as it happened for the Jews of Rome, the order of deportation of the Jews of Rhodes was intercepted by the British, and they decided not to intervene.
Yes, the gentleman there.
Yes, I just want to tell about recent events. I was in Rhodes about 6 years ago, and there is now a monument, and it's the square is called Square of Jewish Martyrs,
Mhm.
and the monument with inscriptions in several languages. And then I heard on the news about 2 years ago that there was some guy who was urinating on this.
Every year they do it. Every year, after the commemoration of the 23rd of July, that we go to Rhodes for the commemoration, that same evening when we leave, right? Of course, the Greeks don't leave a guard or anybody else, right, to guard the monument, and Greek boys or young men come and do exactly that. They put swastikas,
Yes,
I
so
guess we have to live with that.
one very last question back there. Can you speak up, please?
If you looking at your history, what happened in Europe 50 years ago, and seeing the radicalization in different countries in Europe right now, like France and all the countries going after those that are Muslims and other Christians, do you feel that space Europe actually goes in that direction?
Non sento niente.
You have to speak up,
possibile.
otherwise we cannot hear you.
Do you feel that they haven't learned from World War
Pensi che non abbiano imparato 50 anni dopo, con tutto quello che sta succedendo? Quello che
That's
sta
exactly what I was saying yesterday to someone. And my, what I can say is to Jews and non-Jews, don't be afraid. If you see something like that, stand on your own and fight it any ways you want, any ways you can. And that is, don't turn your face away. Don't minimize the threat. Because it's there. And it's there not only for the Jews, for the Muslims here, for the Jews there, for the homosexuals over here, for the lesbians over there, for everyone that you don't like, or something, whatever.
And I think we couldn't close this evening with a better appeal coming especially from Stella, that remembering those facts that seem so far ago, but not too far having you here, it's an invitation to be militant about spotting injustice, discrimination, wherever it appears, under any form it might appear, and stand up against it. And I think it's a beautiful militant wish coming from Stella and from somebody who lived it in her own skin. Thank you.